Okay, let's get started. I'm sure some more people will be joining us along the way. If you've been to some of these before, the way I like to do this is to sort of just have me talking, but since this one's a little different, it's going to be Q&A. If you have questions, um, you can pop them up in the chat window. I can see them. If we don't have too many people, maybe we can open up the microphones. It's just if you get too many people online trying to talk at once, it gets a little confusing. So, welcome and thank you for joining us. So I've done a few of these before about the PBDB, and we've had webinars on data entry and data retrieval and educational resources. There's going to be another one next week on doing Bayesian phylogenetic analysis, which is going to be run by my colleague Pete Wagner. But I thought it would be helpful just to have just an open session of questions and answers. So first, let me ask you a question. Can you guys see my web browser with the Paleobiology Database home screen? So just somebody give me a yes in the chat window, that'd be great. Or no, if you can't see it. Whoever's got their mic on, can you please turn it off? Thank you. And video too. We're going to save our bandwidth by not doing video. So thank you so much. Okay, so I wrote down the top 10 questions people have asked me via email, but I'd like to open it up to you guys first. If you don't have any right away, I can get the ball rolling. Does anyone have one right away? They're like, how do you do this? Or how does this work? Just type it in the chat and I'll let you know what we got. Or even just say you have a question and then I'll call on you and you can ask me verbally. How's that sound? That way we only have one person talking at once. And thank you for confirming you can see my browser. Is there any value putting older papers in Pvdb? Sherry, that is a great question. The answer is, oh my God, yes. The older stuff is sort of the meat and potatoes because we are trying to put every fossil occurrence on the planet in the database. So old stuff, and if you're doing a bunch of papers, it's probably best to do the old stuff first because they often establish the nomenclature. So they establish the names, and you don't want to have to enter a new paper and try to enter names from the 1800s or even the 1950s, right? So if you do them in chronological order, it tends to get a lot, it's a lot easier to do. It's a great question. Others? I'm working on a collection from the 1850s. Yep. And yeah, I mean, we go all the way back. So and what's great about that is now a lot of that stuff is being back scanned and also free on the internet. And so they're easy to get at. Sometimes they're a doozy, people used to do these monster graphs, hundreds of, I just downloaded today Agassiz 1843 paper on fish. And it's kind of half entered the PBDB, but it's such a monster. No one's ever done the whole thing. Yep. Other questions? Hearing none right now, I'll grab one from my grab bag of questions. The single most common thing people email me, because I'm the person who answers the info@paleobiodb.org email, which is sort of the generic, I don't know what to do here, let me ask. They say, I found an error, can you fix it? And the answer is, I probably have the power to do that, but I don't have the time. So more often than not, they're not actually finding errors. They just don't like what it says. But remember, we enter whatever authors said in their papers. We don't edit things as we're entering them. We just, even if it seems crazy, we enter it. And the way to fix that kind of error is to enter papers that say something else that are newer, and that will fix the error. So again, there are errors, don't get me wrong. We get typos, and someone the other day said, oh, this collection from Wyoming is showing up in Arizona. And I'm like, oops, and there was an error in the coordinates, and that I went in and fixed. But in general, if you find problems, the best thing to do is try to contact the person who entered the data. because they're probably the most familiar with it. And every piece of data in the database is linked to the person who entered it. So you can email them and they can try to look at it better than me, because I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if you're right or wrong. You know. Other questions? And notice the difference in the references that I get when downloading occurrences compared to downloading bibliographic references. Hendrik, yes, because they actually are different data sets. So the references with occurrences are those that have occurrences of the taxonomy requested. If you download bibliographic references, you could use completely different search parameters. And there could be papers that have some taxonomy in them. Like, let's say I do whales. So if you said, show me all the references with occurrences of whales, you get one list. If you say, show me all the references about whales, you're going to get a similar list. But if there's papers with just taxonomy and no occurrences, those will be on one or the other. So they could be very overlapping, but not identical. So it's not filtering, it's really what you're requesting. And you're requesting two slightly different things in those instances. Yep, another good question. Yep, others. Is there a way to hide sensitive locality data, such as if a site is on private land? If not, is it okay to just add a general locality data near town X? The answer is no, you must put in coordinates. However, you can put them in as specifically or as generically as you want. So if you don't know this, the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology, with my help, and lots of other people, but I was participant in this process, drafted a document, you can get on their website, that lets you identify how sensitive a site is and how much to genericize the coordinates. So basically, you just sort of start lopping off decimal places to your decimal coordinates. So I would, I think whole number coordinates are probably pretty bad. That's a bad locality. You can even 1/10 of a degree is way better than that, and you're never going to find a place. And so I would read that document and enter the data accordingly. Yes, it's a good question. I know this is a broad topic. I'm a strong advocate for as much specificity as you can, but I understand in some cases that's not wise and something you can't do. So I'd read that document and enter the data as specifically as you can, or should. Yep, another great question. Others. So hearing a pause, I'll throw one of mine in. Next on my list, a lot of people ask if you download collections or occurrences, you get coordinates of the collections, and you can get paleo coordinates. And those are, you can get two kinds. You can get ones from the G-plate system and the Scotese paleo coordinates. Now, they're usually pretty close to each other, but not always. And occasionally in the G-plates model, you get no paleo coordinates because they don't have a specific model for that little chunk of land that your fossil happened to be on. So the default is to give you the G-plates, but you can also get the system to give you back the Scotese paleo coordinates, which I think is fully complete. It translates everything. So that's where we get our paleo plate position. So they're not really generated by us. They're generated by the experts in that field. And we just use their system to do that. Other questions? So far, I haven't had to go show you anything. So they're just, you're asking good questions, but they're just ones I can answer verbally. Okay, when entering a previously recombined species, should authorship be assigned to the authors of the combination or of the original species? Seems both cases occur in the database. I'm not quite sure what you mean, because the original species should be the original combination and should always be assigned to the original authors. The recombination is associated with the reference that does the recombination. So it should always be the author of the species should always be the original author. So it could be that those are actual data entry errors, but without a specific instance, I don't know. So if you have one, I could call it up and see. Yeah, errors occur, trust me. We try to iron them out. Do you have a specific example I could look at? Okay, so I'm just going to do one. That's fine. So here's a species near and dear to my heart. And here's the authority data for Dorodon atrox. And you can see in this thing, it says, oh, the original name was Prozuglodon atrox. So Dorodon atrox is not, this is a recombination, and it belongs to Dorodon gibbs. And originally it was described by C.W. Andrews, but Andrews didn't call it this. He called it this. So this is one place you can look. Another place, if you're logged in as an authorizer, if you look here, here are all the different opinions about it. I love this screen. So it just summarizes everything everyone's ever said about this thing. So lately, it's been called Dorodon atrox, but originally it was Prozuglodon atrox of Andrews. We can go look at that opinion. So on page 255, he said it belongs to Prozuglodon, and it's new. And, oh, there's no diagnosis. Mon Dieu, I need to put that in there. But you can see the species, even in the recombined mode, is still attributed to Andrews. So if you're seeing that's not the case, I'll bet somebody did one of these, or they assigned it to an earlier paper and they didn't do it quite right. But again, that's very fixable, but I have a hard time fixing other people's taxonomy because I don't, it can get very complicated, and I would, unless I have the paper right in front of me, I'd be very leery of trying to fix that kind of thing. But yeah, good question. Others, what else you got? Other questions? Okay, so speaking of taxonomy, I often get the question, people say, well, I see goofy things in your taxonomy, it's bizarre, I don't know what you're talking about, and they ask, like, what taxonomic authority are we using? But as I just showed you, I'll do another one here. Here's all the things anyone's ever said about the species Basilosaurus setoides, the species of Basilosaurus known from North America. And you can see there's a lot of different opinions. Most of them are either it belongs to Zeuglodon or it belongs to Basilosaurus. And the one in force is this one that's in bold. But it can change on a dime, right? So like tomorrow, someone could say it belongs to some brand new genus or something because they don't think that Basilosaurus is valid, or who knows. But since it changes all the time, and this happens all the way down to the species level and all the way up to literally, there's an ultimate taxon in the system called life, anything can happen. So sometimes it creates these sort of nonsense taxonomies where you have, like, say, an order, and there's just random species assigned to the order, and they're not going into any families or superfamilies, right? And you're like, why is this? It's such a mess. And it's because that's the status as entered into the database. So if something's out of place, you can enter a paper and fix where it belongs. And sometimes when you look at it, you're like, well, there is no paper that does that. And so it's really reflecting reality. And that suggests, if you're a person working in that group, that somebody needs to do something with that goofy taxon that has nowhere to go because it was left out in the cold by someone who did the last revision of that family or whatever. So I get a lot of questions about strangeness in the taxonomy. And what I always tell people is, you should join the database and enter more papers to fix that up in your group of choice. because we got lots of people doing lots of things, but we hardly have experts in every taxonomic group entering data, much less taxonomy in that data or in that group. Yeah, other questions? This is just so I'm getting a private message. I'm going to say it to everyone. Pete, I'm sorry. Pete Wagner's asking me if I've shown them the taxonomic databases from PBDB members. I have not. There are several groups that have been entered rather comprehensively. Whales are one. Yay, all marine mammals actually are in there pretty comprehensively. Dinosauria by Matt Grano. Matthew Clapham has entered all the insects and taxonomy of insects. Do you remember any other groups that are in pretty comprehensively? Anywho, so this could be you. You could enter all the taxonomy. Oh, well, Pete says he did Paleozoic snails. Thank you, Pete. And so if you want to do a big group or even a small group, you can enter everything in there and then do a sort of archive of that data. And we also have a way to, sorry, if you go to official pubs, you can get, you can get an official publication number by emailing the secretary, and you do this at the time your paper is about to be published, so you can have all the details. Then we'll assign you an official publication number, which is makes you, it's like an extra cool badge you can put on your paper in the acknowledgements or whatever. It's just a nice way to sort of promote your own paper. And in addition to this, if you go to here, you click this thing, it takes you to our Google Scholar page, and it shows you papers that have either used PBDB data or mentioned PBDB in some way, or just anyway, somehow associated with a database. And you can see them in rank order by how much they've been cited, and you can see the impact that PBDB has had. And so as a whole, this batch of papers has an H index of 89, which is kind of cool. And so we use this to sort of tell people how much impact that PBDB is having on the world of paleontology. So that's pretty cool. Other questions? All right, I'm going back to my grab bag, but while I'm talking, feel free to get some more questions. So I get questions like, how do I cite the database? And I get that a lot. It sort of depends on how you're using it. What I like to do, like I literally just sent a paper off yesterday, no, 2 days ago, sorry, where I made a map of all basilosaurids in the Eocene globally. So there was a list of papers that those data came from, and I sent it off as supplementary data as a data bibliography. And I kind of like that because we really want to give credit to the people who put those dots on the map. And it's not the database, right? It's the papers those data are derived from. So I'd really encourage you to do that. You can cite the data archives that we were mentioning. You can, if you look under the fact page, there's a thing that says, how do I cite the database? And you can use this format for a download. You just say, I did this download, here's how it worked. You could credit the people who've entered the data, but again, that's really nice, but it's kind of a mechanical task, right? Like all the data I entered, most of it's not my data, someone else did it. So there's lots of different approaches you can take, but this is one way to do it. The archives are another way to do it. A data bibliography is probably the best way to do it. Because there you can say, I downloaded this data on this day at this time, and here's all the papers it's derived from. More questions from the peanut gallery. You guys are very quiet. By the way, if you missed any of the previous webinars, I've been recording them, and archiving them, sorry, I pushed mute. You can see them on our YouTube channel. It's just the Paleobiology Database YouTube channel, and they're also linked here. So if you go to resources, I don't know what they're called, tutorials. So there's a bunch here. This is one I did last week. This is one our colleague Evan Vlachos did last week. Here's another one a couple weeks ago. So they actually exist on YouTube, and they're just linked from here. So that is a great resource. So if you're not quite sure how to download data, how to enter data, many questions are answered there. Again, I'm here to help if you need that right now. Okay, so next on my grab bag of questions, I have, here we go. This is my first webinar I've attended, and from what I'm hearing, the DB is based on papers as opposed to the actual collections held at a given institution. Is it possible to upload the collection of a given institution to the DB? Excellent question, and it was going to relate to what I was just going to tell you. The answer is no, but. So yes, the PBDB is derived from the published literature. So people write about it, we enter the reference and enter the data from that reference. However, we realize that that's only part of the data, right? So let me show you something. So can you now see the cutest logo ever from ePanda, I hope? So ePanda was a project that we had a few years ago, and the ePanda system mashes up data from PBDB with that from iDigBio. And iDigBio is a system that pools museum specimen databases. So in effect, you get what you're asking for. As long as your museum collection gets fed to iDigBio, it can get mashed together with PBDB data. Now, the reason we don't really want the museum data in the database is it's of a different sort, right? When it gets published, someone has sort of validated it. Someone said, these fossils are identified right, and they're from these places at these times. Where stuff in museums is a sort of it's had a sort of first pass, right? People sort of give it some names and identify where it came from, but it's not been peer reviewed, for instance. And so this way you sort of get the best of both worlds. You get data from museums and you get data from the literature put together using the same search parameters. And yeah, you can identify them separately. So I hope that answered your question, Howard. If not, let me know. So another question that I get that's quite related to this is people say, well, I have a big spreadsheet of data. Can you upload it for me? And to date, the answer is no, because we don't have a system to do that. And we certainly don't have people to do that. However, I am happy to report, and so this is hot off the presses, our team just got a grant from the Geoinformatics program at the National Science Foundation. And one component of that is to create a data uploader. So what it'll allow you to do is take your spreadsheet of data and map it to the fields that we, and then also so you'll have to fill in the required fields, and then anything else can get mapped to other fields. And you know, hopefully when it's done, we'll be able to just push a button and then proofread what happens, and then you could, you know, upload it into the system. Howard says, if I was to upload to iDigBio, then be merged to ePanda and eventually to PBDB. Howard, that's not quite right. So all these systems use this thing called APIs, which just they talk to each other. It's like a way for them to talk to each other. So if you get your museum data to iDigBio, it will be in iDigBio. PBDB data is over here, but then you have to query ePanda, which then gives you a data return with both of those data, but they're kept separate. We never merge the data into PBDB, but you, the user, can merge them on the download side using ePanda. Does that make sense? Okay. Yep. It's a little odd to think of it this way, but this is the way lots of systems are going now because the data are different. They have different, there's a lot of similarity in them, but they're not really identical data. So IDBio has sort of a very minimal data set. PBDB has a very expansive data set in the sense that we keep hundreds of pieces of information about an occurrence, whereas they keep like 20. But that's fine. Those 20 overlap almost perfectly with our required pieces of data. What else can I tell you about that? What's nice about ePanda too is if you're working on organisms that are still alive, IDBio has stuff on fossils and recent taxa, so you can match up fossils and recent using the ePanda system. So yeah, that's pretty nifty. I see as we currently have only 29 records in Pvdb. They're all quite old. I'm not sure who we are, but I can check for you. What do you mean we? Remember, they're coming from papers, so I'm not sure what you mean there. Right. So Howard, I'm not sure how you would attribute them to your university in particular, because they're coming from papers. So there could be lots of stuff by your faculty or from your museum that are hidden in other papers or other collections that don't have like your institutional codes on them. Yeah, it's a little hard to, since PBDB does not track specimens. So something to really remember is we only track occurrences, right? And we're moving to be able to take specimen data, but we're not there yet. So any specific occurrence of a specific fossil specimen at a particular place is hard to attribute since we don't really track specimen numbers in all instances. Right. So Howard says he searched under the collection name using UALDP, and that's so there's like you say, there's 29 with those letters in there. There could be more, right? Sometimes we allow you to put in. Let me show you my favorite collection. An old one. This is one of my favorite places. Melvin, Alabama, the Archaeocete whale capital of the world. So we force you to give it a name, and then we allow you to do that and add other names. And so sometimes I usually put in sort of a verbal, a textual name here, and then like specimen or locality numbers here. Other people just put the locality numbers up here. But whenever you search, like the search you did, you said you search for the collection name using UALDP, it searches both. So it's smart that way. But there could be more that are attributable to UALDP if someone, say, used this and for whatever reason failed to put in collection number. But, yep. Good questions. Others? What else you got for me? Sherry. So IDBio tracks specimens. PBDB tracks occurrences, and ePanda mashes them both up. That's correct. And so IDBio, again, is just a bunch of data sent to it by a bunch of museums. So they don't really do much of anything. It's very helpful that they pool it all together, but the data is backtrackable to the museum. So let me show you a little trick. So again, I'm using taxa I know because I know this works. So if you search for a taxon at the genus or species level, you get this little blurb, and there's way more clickable stuff here. You can see the classification, the type species, show more details. There's a lot more details. But way at the bottom, it says display images. So what's going to happen now is that when I push this button, the system is now going through ePanda, querying iDigBio, and coming up with specimen photos sent to iDigBio, sorry, linked to iDigBio from the museum. So it's like, oh, there's a pretty skull. I wonder what that's all about. Well, there it goes. But if you click the little button, the little information button, we're going to access the iDigBio record. So let's do it. Boom. There it is. So this tells you this is actually originally called Zeuglodon intermedius by Dart, and it's in the Natural History Museum, London. And there is a specimen number. So here's all the specimen metadata associated with that particular specimen. That's pretty cool. So this is what I mean when it mashes it together, because all PBDB knows about this specimen is that it is now called Dorodon. It's actually a subjective synonym of Dorodon etrox. But iDigBio knows a lot more about it, and the Natural History Museum in London knows even more. And so this is it's a pretty nifty little thing because we don't do photos, we don't do data, any kind of media, but this is a way for us to access a system that does. And iDigBio has focused quite a little bit on media, and so there are lots of photos of things that happen to be in iDigBio. Yep, great questions. Other stuff. What else do you got? Oh my God, the next thing on my list is can we provide photos? The answer is no, because we don't have them, but iDigBio can. And also that lots of times people ask, can we send them the PDFs of the papers? The answer is no, because PBDB isn't a thing. There's no office, and like rando people have entered them, so they have PDFs or whatever. So we don't have specimen data, but iDigBio might, and so we can't provide anything that's not available to everyone on the web. Okay, so Hendrik says, example concerning what I asked for earlier about the authorship of combinations from the Pvdb. Falcisporides australis was named by Baum, is not extant. Originally it was blah, 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 not described by Plain. Okay, let me look it up. Okay, so let's look at this together. So I'm going to grab this thing. I'm going to search for the name. Okay, so you can see here that this paper, Berger 1996, you guys can see my screen with me highlighting stuff, right? Just being sure here. So this paper, Berger 96, had this name in it, and this paper said that it was named by Baum 1955. Right. Whether that's right or not, I have no idea. So originally it was Alisporides australis, not described by Blaine. It's incidentally, it's also in the PBDB. Okay. So my question, Hendrik, is Alisporides australis Jersey and Hamilton 1967, are they the actual authors of Alisporides australis, or is that a mistake? So I will bet you money if someone were to look up this paper, Berger 96, he does indeed say that Falcisporides australis was named by Blaine. Okay, so what I'm saying is, if this is really what he said, then he was wrong, and the person who entered it did it right, but it still might be wrong. Okay, so what I'm saying is, you guys who are experts on this stuff need to find the right papers and then fix these kind of errors. Like, because if it were my taxa, I'd be looking this paper up, and I'd be looking this paper up, and trying to figure out where the truth lies and fixing it. But like I said, it could be a data entry error, or it could be an error by the author. And so either way, we would like to fix that taxonomically, but I'm not going to touch it because I don't know what the answer is. Even though you said I think there's some earlier reference by DeJersey. Right. So now someone's going to do that homework and fix this, because I call this going down the rabbit hole, and I do it like I could spend a whole day sometimes chasing down some of this crazy stuff just because I'm super anal retentive about my taxonomy. So anywho, it's I think it's kind of fun. Sometimes I have a data waste, more often than not I don't, but there you go. I hope that helps. So let me look at the next question here. In the taxonomic authority file, if no type was selected, was specifically designated, how to enter that? Well, just like you see on my screen, there's nothing. You don't have to say anything. None of these fields are required except for and some authorship stuff. And then I think you have to say whether it's extant or extinct. Yep. And what should be entered under body type? Body part of type, this stuff. You don't have to pick any of this, but you can, right? So you can, if you know. If you don't know, just leave it blank. The database will yell at you if you have to put something in and you haven't. Yep. So it'll remind you that you must fill in a field if you forget to fill one in. For some reason on this screen, the required fields aren't red. Usually they're red. So we're hopefully with our new grant going to redo some of these forms and make them a little more user intuitive. So stay tuned. It won't be for a while, but with the next few years, hopefully we'll be revising some of these. So Pete, yes, thank you. He says, as a longtime PBDB member, one thing we really want is people like you who know these groups get involved and enter these kinds of information. Yeah, it's really critical that if you are concerned about a particular group, that you be the person to get in there and do it. And you can even get a team of people together to do it. That's even better. If your group is humongous, get all your peeps together and enter the classic papers first, and then the more modern papers second. And again, there's no arguments to be had about what the taxonomy looks like, because you're just entering what the author said. You don't have to agree on the taxonomy. You just get it all in there, and then you can argue about it, which is fun. Yep. Okay. Other question. Other question. I'll look something up. Let me see if this will work. Oh, that's not what I want to do. I'm so sorry. Okay, so I'm searching for taxon, and as I said, you usually get this. So Davis R, please go through the process for doing a collection entry. Likewise, how to enter a location. That was the subject of one of my earlier webinars. It's kind of involved, and so I don't really want to go through the whole shebang. I'll show you in like a couple minutes. That I'll just really quickly show you, but go back and watch that video. But hold that thought for a sec. So if I go here, so this is the show more details about a taxon. There's a lot. And if you look here, there's one called ecology and taphonomy. So there's a whole series of these, we call them the ecotaph variables. And so it says that it's composed of hydroxyapatite. It's marine, aquatic, it's a carnivore. And so if you look, there's these weird superscripts after all these words. And the reason is, so a lot of people ask me, where do these ecotaph variables come from? Like, where do they come from? So what's happening is in the taxonomic hierarchy, someone at some point set them. And so hydroxyapatite, someone said all vertebrates are made of hydroxyapatite, and everything that's in vertebrata got that assigned. And it says it's at the suborder level. So somebody decided the suborder Mysticeti was hydroxyapatite. Okay. They're roller shaped, and that's O at the ordinal level. So all cetacea are roller shaped. The suborder says they're carnivores. And so here's the weird thing is if you look, let's do this one. So for instance, I'm sure someone went in and said carnivora are carnivores, but are all carnivores carnivora? And the answer is no. So you can hop in there and say like, ooh, the genus of panda, which I'm forgetting now, Eluriapoda, I think it is not. So you can actually go in at the generic level and sort of override what's coming down from higher levels. So sometimes people will find like wacky ecology stuff in here and be like, that's wrong. Or like, yes, you're right, it's wrong, go fix it. And that's why, that's where it's coming from. It's coming from some higher level taxon and cascading down. You have to sort of go in and interrupt that cascade and say, oh, but this is a change. So that's where those variables come from. So Davis R, you wanted me to do a collection. I'll just show you one, and then again, it's very involved. Please go back and watch that other video. So I'll go back to Melvin, just because again, I know it's there and it's my favorite place. So in what you see across the top is a series of tabs. There's 7 tabs of places you can enter data. And the things that are required are in red. Needs a name. Access level up here, I frankly always set to public and immediate because I'm a free data guy. You can see a whole bunch of papers have been used to enter data about this collection. You got to give it some geography. You must have country, and if you're in the US, you must have state, and you must have at least degree level coordinates. I left some tabs open on my computer here because I was doing PBDB data entry this morning. If you've never been here, geolocate is just the coolest thing to help you find coordinates. So let's actually try to relocate Melvin, Alabama. Melvin, United States. And here again, you have to include a state. So here it is, Melvin. I know that's incorrect. So it gives you its best guess and second best guess. In this case, I know the second best guess is the correct one. We're going to zoom in. And again, I'd be looking at a paper telling me where this place was. So Melvin is actually, the town is right there. I happen to know the place these whales are from is actually here. And I'm not sure why geolocate is putting the dot there, but that's where the whales are from. I mean, there's actually sites here and here, but Melvin, Alabama is right there, and there are the coordinates. And you can enter them there. So that's a super duper helpful tool that was designed for museums to help geolocate verbal descriptions. So there you go. We put in some stuff about stratigraphy. You need some time. You are very strongly encouraged to put in any stratigraphy you got. Geology of the rocks, environment of deposition, some stuff about the fossils themselves. If specified, never, ever, ever read stuff in. If they don't say it's phosphate or that it's, if they don't say it in the paper, don't put it here. Don't make assumptions. Here, you're required to put in a size class, but these size classes are very broad. And then some more sort of collecting info about how it was collected, and that's it. And you're done. And then when you're all done, you got to go here and enter the taxa. So here are the taxa that you enter that were found at that place. Can I butt in with one extra point? Pete Wagner, yes, please, go ahead. Feel free to unmute and talk.
Unmute button. In following up with Mark said, enter what the paper says, but by all means, feel free to follow the paper trail, the electron trail to other papers that might be talking about these rock units in these localities for biostratigraphic reasons, environmental reasons. Of course, frequently the taxonomy papers will be telling you to look there for all that information anyways. But then that's its own reference. It'll be one, like in this paper that Mark is showing, where there seem to be like 75 gazillion papers that have contributed to this one locality. It'll just be another one that's there. But that way you're leaving the electron trail for other people to follow. And if you can, even just put in the notes, this information is from this paper, not the main one.
So, and Pete is absolutely right. So if you look here, it says down in the comments about stratigraphy, listed in Kellogg as Jackson formation. Later, the Jackson is elevated group status, identifies Pachutamaro member. So these are my comments based on other papers. So here's what Kellogg 1936 had said. It was in the Jackson formation, but I've moved it to group because other papers have said that. And you can even list what papers, what of this list of papers said what, because it can get very complicated, especially about changing formation names, changing formation identities, changing ideas of age. Those are the ones that change a lot, and that's where these comment fields can be really, really handy. So you can, as Pete said, keep track of that. So we know where you got this age from. For the geography, can coordinates be added as UTMs? The answer is no. This is what we got right now. There are lots of UTM translators. Again, in the future, what I really hope is to have much more flexibility here about how you can enter coordinates. But for now, you must enter them either as degrees, minutes, seconds, or degrees plus decimal degrees. Okay. So, I mean, again, it's a feature we hope to add. It's on our list, but don't hold your breath. I mean, if it comes, it's going to be a couple of years. So, yeah. But the computers are better at doing that translation than we are, but there are decent UTM to DMS translators out there. So sorry about that. Do know it is on the feature request list. So trust me, I've put most things on that list myself. Other questions? So I'll toss one out again. I'm almost running out, but that's okay. People ask a lot why we don't correct obvious mistakes in taxon names, like misspellings and where the gender of the specific epithet doesn't match the genus. And the reason is what I said before, which is we always put in what the paper said. We're not the ones making these calls, right? So we put in what the paper said, and if some other paper fixes those spelling errors and agreements of number or gender, then you can enter them, and then it'll sort of self-correct. But we're not the editors. We want to represent the misspellings and that poorly formed Latin so that other people are aware of it, and people can either enter papers that fix it or write the papers that fix it and then enter them. So I had a gentleman like ready to rip my head off for refusing to do this. Like he was very insistent that we were doing the world a disservice by serving out misspelled names. And I said, write a paper to fix them. And to me, it's a call to action to write the definitive paper that corrects those things. And if we were to just correct them on data entry, we'd be hiding the truth. And so that's my strong opinion. And he didn't care for that. So anyway, other questions? Have any of you guys tried downloading or data entry and had some issues, or just like, what's this? It's just goofy, or I didn't get what I thought I'd get. I also get a lot of people who will email and say, well, this occurrence is missing. And again, I just thought, yep, agreed. Because what's in the database is what's entered in the database. And so if your group has been entered well, then good on you. If not, time to get to work. Another question I get is, are there snapshots of the PBDB from the past? Like, could you look at it and see what it looked like 10 years ago? And the answer is not quite. You could download data entered up to a certain date or by a certain person, but some of the data are not tracked like that. Like if I were to go correct taxonomy, that would not be taken into account by a date download. It's just basically the collections data that works that way. We do hope, again, with our new grant, to be able to do that, to do the sort of time date stamping snapshots of the database in the past. So we may be able to do that in the future. Davis R asks, what is the long-term purpose vision of the Pvdb? So the short mission statement I always say is we want to database every occurrence of every fossil on the planet, which is a lot, right? There's a lot of fossils, there's a big planet, there's a lot of geologic time. I know that's not realistic, which is why we work with other people like iDigBio, and we work with our friends at the Neotoma Paleoecological Database. If you don't know what that is, it's similar in design and function to PBDB, but it focuses mainly on the Pleistocene and Holocene record. It has lots of pollen, more sort of archaeological, zooarchaeological data, and you can actually mash that up if you go here. And this thing does basically the same thing as ePanda, except instead of mashing up PBDB and iDigBio, it mashes up PBDB and Neotoma data. So if you're working in the near recent, this is a great way to do it. So our goal is to database every fossil on the planet with help from our friends. Maybe that's the best way to do it. So we will definitely, there are developing sort of human or anthropological sort of databases that I'm sure we'll link up with, probably using the EarthLife Consortium format because it's designed to be expanded. But those are, they're coming online, but they're not quite done. So again, we are also, there's a grant out right now to get the old ocean drilling project data actually into PBDB. So that's a huge data set that's a little different than data we're normally used to dealing with, but that's happening now. So soon those data will be coming online and be fully searchable within the PBDB. So we're getting there, and with more people like y'all helping, we'll get there. And as I like to say, like we're doing this one taxonomic group at a time, or one time period at a time. So, like I said, marine mammals are done, dinosaurs are done, insects are done, mollusks maybe will never be done. But anyway, whatever your group is, you and your colleagues are the best people to take care of that. eBAMFort. When you download taxon occurrence data, two of the columns are identified number and collection number. Yep. The collection number is the number of the collection where it's from. Identified, no, I think is the number of the taxon which it is identified as. And if ever you see those and you're like, what are these? You can go right here. I'll show you where to find this information so you can check me. Go to API resources and the API documentation. It's in here somewhere. So we click on all these. Basically, every little piece of data that we have is, there you go. So here are some of these names. I don't know. I just randomly clicked, so I wasn't actually looking for them before. But you can look them up in here, and it'll tell you exactly what every single column header in the download looks like. or what it means, every single thing. So you don't need to ask me. You can look it up yourself. I'm teaching y'all to fish. Other questions? I think my list is done. List is done. And I strongly encourage you all to just play with it. Download some data, use different parameters, see what you can do. If you've been on my previous webinars and playing on the training site and feel like you're ready to move up to the big leagues, let me know. If you want me to look at what you've been entering on training and see if, you know, good, bad, or indifferent, I'll be happy to share that with you. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go watch the other videos and then let me know. We'll sign you up. We have a separate site where we test out new software and we test out new users, and you can do anything there. You can break it, but we don't care because it's the training site. There to be broken. And then once you're comfortable, we move you up to the main site. Okay, we've been at this about an hour, and so if you have any more questions, let me know. I'll sit here for another 3 minutes because I have another meeting at 2. But thank you all for coming. And again, Pete, do you want to have a word? Say a word about what you're going to be doing next week, because he's doing the one next week.
Yeah, so this is actually a great page for Mark to leave it on. I will be going over R scripts that I have written in part in collaboration with some other people who are doing phylogenetics with fossil taxa that will basically let you use the paleobiology database to set up phylogenetic analyses in RevBayes, and actually pretty much allow you to set it up for other things like BEAST as well. And it's sort of designed to help get you rolling on these. It's a steep learning curve on, you know, just as you've been no doubt experienced with the paleobiology database, kind of a steep learning curve there helps to get a boost. The steep learning curve with the Bayesian phylogenetics, it's also designed to give paleontologists sort of a boost to get started. But it'll also then show you what to do. I'll also then show you what to do when you discover, as you inevitably will, that the PaleoDB won't have quite all the information that you need, but then that'll just be rehashing a lot of stuff that Mark and others will have told you.
Thanks, Pete. I'm actually really interested in going to this because I've never done Bayesian phylogenetics and I want to learn.
Well,
so I and my graduate students will be there waiting to hear what you have to say. And so
dark side.
if you want to join, we're going to send out an announcement, but also, Pete, when did we decide it's going to be? Tell these people.
When?
Yeah.
It should be same time, same place, next Thursday, 1 Eastern.
Right. So if you want to join, send a message again to info@paleobiodb.org, and we'll send you the login info. The only reason we do that is so we just want to know who's coming, and don't want to broadcast the secure login info broadly on the interwebs. So just look for the announcement or send a message to info. That will be me, and I will send you the login info once we get it together, which will probably be early next week. So thank you all for coming. I hope you learned something. Again, you have my email, either personally or info@paleobiodb.org if things come up and you have questions in the future. Thanks so much, people. I'm really enjoying doing this. I'm glad you guys are getting something out of it. Everyone stay safe, and I'll post this recording so if you know people who wanted to be here but couldn't, send them to see it on our YouTube channel, or you can find the link on the Pvdb site. Thanks much. Everyone take care.